procured by illicit funds and tracking proceeds of crime. It is imperative that those who think they will benefit from the incongruency of these agencies to profit from corruption understand that there is no gains to be had from the theft of public funds. Our colleagues in Parliament, the elected representatives of citizens, also have crucial roles to play. The Public Investments Committee plays a pivotal role in scrutinizing reports and financial accounts related to public investments. Working closely with the Auditor General, this committee can unveil inefficiencies and irregularities that may raise suspicions of corruption. Additionally, the Public Accounts Committee, responsible for reviewing accounts, detailing the allocation of funds for public expenses, also plays a significant part in identifying potential malpractices. If we all work together, judiciously and expeditiously, we shall stem the tide of incidences of corruption. We must always remember that those two committees of Parliament are reserved for the opposition. Public accounts, public investments. That is the preserve of the opposition. Therefore, if we do not have an opposition, we are killing those institutions and contributing to the spreading of corruption. Therefore, when the President made a specific petition to Parliament that it is absolutely essential that we institutionalize the whole structure of opposition in Parliament, he was actually sending a very strong message that if we tamper with that, we'll be undermining the Constitution. So that is why the conversation going on is important, so that we can institutionalize opposition as it should be. Let me touch on a couple of bills. Parliament should fast-track the Conflict of Interest Bill 2023. This is one particular area which has a significant impact on corruption that I am requesting the National Assembly to look into. This is the Conflict of Interest Bill 2023, which was approved by the Cabinet on the 28th of February 2023 and subsequently transmitted to the August House. The bill seeks to provide a framework for the management of conflict of interest on the part of state and public officers arising from the discharge of their official duties. It introduces strong legal safeguards against real, apparent, or potential conflict between the private interests of public servants on one hand and the public interests and their official duties on the other hand. Once enacted into law, it would mark the end of the era where public servants would subordinate their official duties to the private commercial interests. And the young people here gave a very apt demonstration of what this is all about. The bill has undergone its first reading before the National Assembly and is in the pipeline for the second reading. I humbly request that the House fast-tracks this. There are also some retrogressive bills. As I talk of that conflict of interest bill, let me also highlight that there are two bills currently before the National Assembly which raise significant concerns in the ongoing battle against corruption. Both of those bills are titled the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Amendment Bill 2023. One is proposed by Honorable Peter Kaluma, and the other 6 amendments presented by Honorable Geoffrey Ruku. These bills, if passed and enacted into law, have the potential to reverse the progress achieved in the fight against corruption. Honorable Kaluma's bill aims to amend the Anti-Corruption Economic Crimes Act of 2023 by removing the provision disqualifying individuals convicted of corruption or economic crimes from holding public office. On the other hand, Ruku's bill seeks to decriminalize certain aspects of public procurement, property disposal, contract tendering, fund management, and expenditure. If these proposed amendments are accepted, they will open the door for individuals with corruption histories to hold public office and offer significant leniency to those inclined toward corrupt practices within the public sector. This is not to say I do not respect the independence of our government's branches. I recognize the substantial interdependence among them. Therefore, I kindly request the 2 members of Parliament to consider withdrawing their bills. We must remember that we can only defeat corruption if we stand together in unity of purpose and effort. Resources for the EACC. The government of His Excellency the President, William Ruto, has made it clear that all ministries, departments, and agencies have a responsibility to ensure they rid corruption in their midst. But while we actively pursue those engaged in corrupt practices, we must equally dedicate efforts to preventive measures, knowing that prevention is better than cure. We must enhance and sustain transparency and accountability through strengthening systems, policies, and procedures of work in all public institutions. This will ensure that institutions and workplaces are free of corruption loopholes and risks. Our citizens must also be fully engaged against corruption by first and foremost saying no to corruption, and secondly, reporting corruption to EACC whenever they witness it. Citizens must also understand that one of the most effective ways to contribute to the fight against corruption is by electing leaders of unwavering integrity to public office and ensuring that state officers are not only qualified, but also maintain their suitability throughout their tenure. Consequently, the government will provide ample resources to empower the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to effectively implement the civic preventive strategies outlined in the strategic plan. And I've looked at the numbers. I'm fully aware that these institutions require more resources. To members of the Fourth Estate, I want to emphasize the interlocking role you play in the ongoing battle against corruption. Unless you choose to abscond, you are the watchdogs of the society. You have the power to change attitudes, share vital information, and shine a light on corruption in all its forms. By exposing wrongdoings and holding the corrupt accountable, you inspire citizens to adopt a culture free of corruption. Your investigative reporting and deductive truth shine a veneer of legitimate concern in our collective efforts to foster transparency and integrity in our great nation. Let us work together to build a Kenya where honesty and integrity prevail and where corruption finds no refuge in propaganda. I wish at this stage to recognize the partnership of the Kenya government with the UN bodies involved and support in the support against the fight of corruption. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has been particularly active in this endeavor, and Mr. Welsh spoke about that briefly. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption provides a global legal framework to stop corruption. State parties to this convention are expected to cooperate in every aspect of the fight against corruption, including prevention, investigation, asset recovery, and the prosecution of offenders. States are also required to act in the private and public sectors and to promote the work of civil society in this area. Kenya will continue to domesticate all provisions of the Convention to ensure that we have a robust policy, legal and institutional framework that will systematically tackle corruption. Now, let me come to one of the bills that was referred to. A recent addition to our legal framework in the ongoing battle against corruption is the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating of Terrorism Financing Laws Amendment Act of 2023, which received the President's assent on September 1st, 2023. This act brings significant improvements addressing the existing limitations in our fight against money laundering and terrorism. One notable change is the grant of operational independence to the Financial Reporting Center and the Capital Markets Authority, which has been empowered to enforce compliance with anti-money laundering and terrorism financing laws and proliferation financing regulations among its licenses. Similarly, the Insurance Regulatory Authority has been granted the authority to ensure that its licensees adhere to these critical laws. Furthermore, the Central Bank of Kenya has been entrusted with the responsibility of supervising financial institutions and agents affiliated with reporting institutions. Additionally, the Amendment Act incorporates the laundering of proceeds from corruption under the definition of economic crimes. In this war, the importance of planning and setting targets and achieving those targets cannot be underestimated. The Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, "In all things, success depends on previous preparation. And without such previous preparation, there is sure to be failure." I therefore commend the EACC for establishing an elaborate war plan against corruption. With a plan, one prepares, studies challenges and weaknesses, and understands what it is that must be done in order to succeed in the war against corruption. Corruption erodes the very foundations of our society, hindering progress and prosperity, and I must reiterate that the war against corruption must also take a whole of society and a whole of government approaches through the collective action of both state and non-state actors. Whole of society, whole of government, and I want to add one more, open government. This unity of purpose is a concept we must fully embrace in our battle against corruption. We are all stakeholders in this fight, government institutions, civil society, the private sector, and every citizen. By standing united, we send a clear message that corruption will find no refuge in our land. Together, we can create a future where honesty, integrity, and accountability prevail. In this war, there can be no room for fear or favor. The EACC is an independent commission, and it has a solemn influence. It should be considered a sacred cow, immune to accountability. The EACC must investigate and prosecute cases of corruption without prejudice, upholding the law for all citizens. Allow me to reiterate eradicating corruption from our great nation. The launch of this strategic plan should not be just a formality. It should be the plan to action, the unwavering dedication to a Kenya free from the shackles of corruption. I extend my gratitude to fight a very evasive enemy and urge them to still forge ahead with determination. Together, we shall overcome this menace and build a brighter future for all Kenyans. So, Mr. Chairman, bear with me because this matter is so serious that I thought I should spend some very critical time talking to it. But before I declare the plan officially launched, behind the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, something that is not usually in the domain of the public per se. Between 1993 and 1997, when I was the Minister for Finance, we were having serious challenges as a country because we didn't have a framework to fight corruption, as it were. This entity was non-existent, and there were a lot of issues. The journey to get to where you are as EACC started actually with a conversation in the Treasury with our development partners, the IMF, the World Bank. We started this conversation and we started figuring out how can we intensify the war against corruption. And that was the beginning of the conversation of what was called CASA, which mutated into what we have here. And the initial blocks of building this legislation were actually was a strong conversation that was taking place in the Treasury building when I was there. And at that time, we roped in the Solicitor General, who was Justice Ringera, and the AG. And that was the beginning of the building of the blocks of what has today become the EACC. And why did I say I wanted to have a few minutes after this to bring out some of these things? It's because even then, it was not easy to actually get the political buy-in for those initial steps of legislation. We had many battles at cabinet level at that time to try and get the draft, the initial bill that went to Parliament, go through cabinet. Because as the late Anyona said, Corruption is like a hydra. So the challenges you're going through, just confirm that to get the structure and to get it right, when it means fighting against corruption, is a process. It is not an overnight issue. It is a process, and you must keep pounding at it. We must keep on putting our extra hours in there in order to deal with this menace. So that is a bit of the history around it. Maybe one day, when there's no pressure, I can share a little more. But it was quite a journey. I do agree with you that we must not politicize the war against corruption. And nobody is immune, and no institution is immune, and no nation is immune. We have had in Europe the conversation around questions for money, where Parliament has been roped in. Our county assemblies are not immune. Our legislature is not immune. Sometimes you might think it's madness, but there's method in it. When somebody knows that EACC is investigating, somebody then files a petition in Parliament on a similar thing. It's not accidental. It is designed to confuse the process so that the investigative agency is slowed down from pursuing what it should be pursuing. So that one can say, wait a minute, you can't pursue this, it's before a committee of Parliament. So there are intrigues. And all these intrigues, we all have to work together and see how we can resolve them. We have seen very strange examples. The courage at which some people, you can enter an airport, the front line, the front door of a nation, and you find there are some officers there who have no shame. They solicit openly at the front door. And they are in uniform. Some have even had the courage to go and make sure that they tamper with the CCTVs so that even when these transactions are taking place, there's no record. That is how far impunity has gotten in some of our public institutions. So we have a major thing to do, to fight. And for politicians like myself, and I now speak as a very personal level, let us stop politicizing this. I've had my experience with the EACC. I've visited, I've written my statements. But if you have not done anything wrong, then you should not worry. Because these people are professional. They'll do their job. If you have nothing to worry about, you'll go home. If you have something to worry about, then I can't help you. Neither can they help you. So these are the realities. But we should not say that because these institutions are there, we should try and throw mud at them. Because once you're in public office, invariably, you become a potential candidate at one time or the other for an explanation or the other. And if you've not done anything wrong, you should not worry. If you follow procedure, if you have followed the law, if you have operated within the rules, then you have nothing to worry about. So these are the things that we need to push out. And I can say confidently that even when I was having my escapades with the EACC, or my sojourn with them, I was not in government. I had ceased being in government. So I was called, you honor the summons, you go there, you explain yourself, and you move on. Now, why do I say that? I say that so that people can move away from the notion of saying that I am politically targeted. If I was politically targeted during the Kibaki government, maybe I would have been incarcerated. But they were doing their job, and the late Kibaki did not interfere with the process. We went through it, and I walked away after due process. That's why I said it is so important for me to come here, because I can stand in front of you with my head high, saying that let us follow the law. So I really want to encourage you and to tell you, do what you have to do now and tomorrow and the day after without any hesitation whatsoever, because you owe it to Kenyans, you owe it to the young people who are here. We must get them jobs, we must get them a better life, and we can only do that if we can slay the dragon of corruption. Thank you. And with those many remarks, may I now declare the EACC strategic plan of 2023-2028 officially launched. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for His Excellency Dr. Musalia Mudavadi. Asante sana. Now we get to the session which is my favorite, the Pictures Olympics. And His Excellency, you'll indulge me on this because you are starring. So you're the one who will smile all through. Let me call upon the chairperson of the EACC to walk to my left. All right, that's where the launch is happening. The CEO to walk to my left as well. The Auditor General, Nancy Gadungu, to walk to my left as well. Prepare the pair of scissors there. This is sort of like parent